welcome to another set of videos, and this time we're focusing on infant feeding. I'm going to break them down into the usual 10-minute bite-size segments, and whilst they are going to be predominantly about breastfeeding, we will be mentioning some formula feeding information too. So I want to just start off by just showing you this. So this is obviously a little marble, and it's about the size of a cherry, and this marble is I've just got this just to show you. This is about the size of an average newborn baby's tummy. So obviously a newborn baby's tummy isn't rigid like a marble. It's much more stretched, it's much more elastic, but actually it's about that size, and its natural capacity is about 5 mils, is about a teaspoon. So with that in your heads, I'm going to start to ask you a couple of questions. So I've got my baby here, and I want to ask you to start with, how soon after your baby is born do you think that you need to feed your baby? So how soon after birth do you think the baby needs a feed? I can hear you shouting at the screen, directly after birth, straight away. Yes, that's a fabulous answer. Yes, that would be great. Directly after birth, the baby is born, it goes up onto your tummy, up onto your chest, and the baby can smell you. It helps to initiate the feeding. It also, for you, helps to initiate those release of hormones that helps you play your part in initiating this feeding with your baby. So yeah, ideally directly after birth. But you know, sometimes babies are just not interested directly after they've been born, and of course you can see why. For some of them it's been quite an ordeal, it's been quite a journey coming out into the world. For others, they haven't realised, of course, that they're not attached to the placenta anymore, and they're not getting that continuous drip feed of nutrition continuously coming their way. They haven't noticed that yet. Or of course the other reason is that when your baby is born, it's sitting in that bag of waters, and just sometimes the babies might swallow into their tummies as they're being born some of that or some of that waters that they're sitting in. So of course they only need to swallow just a little bit to fill that tiny tummy. So it's no surprise that sometimes directly after birth the babies aren't interested, but that's why having them near you, cuddling them, can be great, because then when they're ready, it's that they're in the right place. Yeah. So having them against you can help them, to stimulate them when they're ready. If you've got a full-term healthy infant, so by that I mean if you've got a baby that's 37 weeks plus when it's born, and your baby is well, and we're not worried about your baby in any way, yeah, if that's you and your baby, then it's perfectly okay for them not to feed directly, yeah. But having them against you might, encourage them when they're ready. But after an hour or two, if they're still not interested, we might be encouraging you to try to encourage them, yeah? And one of the things that you can do is to maybe just start to hand express. So if you hand express, what you're inevitably doing is getting some of the colostrum, the very early milk, the very early nutrition that you're giving your baby, just a few drops maybe to come to the end of the breast tissue there, and just maybe the baby might smell that, and it might be infused to feed, rather like you or I when we go past the bakery and we smell the bread, yeah, we go past the burger bar and we smell the onions. Oh yeah, yes please, yeah. So that's kind of what we're hoping for, that you're doing something to stimulate them, to remind them of the job in hand. So when we're talking about hand expressing, so I've got my knitted breast here and my little bit of elastic to hold it, yeah. And what I want to show you is how you might do this, yeah. But don't worry, because of course when you're in the hospital with us, we have knitted boobs there, knitted breasts there to demonstrate again, and to help you, to guide you, so you can do this, for real when you need to. So what I've got here is my finger and thumb, and I'm making it into a C shape. And where I'm going to place it is not on the dark pigment of the breast tissue there. I'm going a little bit further back onto that lighter pigment, because just between where the dark pigment and the light pigment meet, on the first bit of that light pigment, it's a bit knobbly, and underneath there are all the glands that we're really trying to stimulate to help to produce this colostrum. So it's what we're going to do is we have our thumb and our forefinger, and we're not pinching, we're not sort of rubbing like your shoe, your shoe rubs your heel. It's quite different to that. We've got our finger and our finger and our thumb, and we're just causing some pressure quite rhythmically and release, some pressure and release, some pressure and release. So your finger and your thumb is sort of like at 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Then you might move your finger and thumb around. So now it becomes at 3 o'clock and at 9 o'clock. And again, moving it to 7 o'clock and 5 o'clock and so on. So what you're doing is you're just trying to stimulate just a little bit of that colostrum to be produced, yeah? And that's easier done for you as well when your baby's alongside, when you see your baby, all those hormones are happening. That's going to sort of work together with all of this to make this hopefully an okay job that you can do. So what an amazing job that you can do. So a little bit of colostrum that comes to the, is there on the end of the breast tissue there, and hopefully the baby will then be, tempted. It says yes, please. But if the baby still isn't interested in feeding, then to continue and actually collect, as the, after you, once the drops, once the colostrum begins to appear, rather than stopping and then putting the baby to the breast because you've got it. If the baby isn't interested, you might well continue to do this, yeah. And then what you can do is collect the colostrum either in a syringe, or you can collect it on a spoon. I'm making this look very awkward here, but of course you'll be able to do this with this hand if you're right-handed, and then just collect like this, yeah, or collect like this, or even just get your partner to just help you and be the person collecting, yeah? So you can collect that colostrum, and then or not your partner, perhaps get one of us. We'll help you, of course, to collect it with a syringe, and then give that to your baby, and then hopefully that will, those calories will give the baby a little burst in sugars. The baby will have a little sleep, and when it wakes up, hopefully then it'll be more enthusiastic to have a go at feeding. If not, we can repeat the process. Yeah. So getting that feeding established, getting the baby interested, that's something that you can do. But we'll guide you, we'll support you, and the needs will be different for each person. So that's why, please, when you're, after you've had your baby, let us help you, let us suggest what you can do next, and help guide you through that so that you can have the best experience. Okay, so that's a little bit about getting the baby interested in feeding. I want to ask you another question. I want to ask you, how could you tell when your baby is hungry? How could you tell the baby is hungry? I can hear you shouting, when the baby cries, it's hungry, yeah? And lots of people will say that. But there's other cues that will give us a clue that your baby is hungry. And if you wait till the baby is hungry, then you've got to settle your baby and calm them down before you can feed them. That's why we have at our hospital, and always, for many years I've had what we call a rooming in policy. So that means the babies are with you 24 hours a day, yeah? So part of that is obviously security. Part of that is because then they're exposed to all the same things you're exposed to. But also it's because, of course, you get to recognise their cues. So you get to recognise what your baby does that tells you that it's starting to it's ready for a feed. It might be just even the way it opens its eyes and looks around. It might be some of the sucking on its fingers, or on or on a piece of its clothes or its bedding or what have you. So there's many sort of signs that your baby will show us, and if you can get that baby in that early time, then you don't have to settle them down first. So if I just show you this, you can see at a glance feeding cues. So to get them early, then you don't have to settle them before you you can start to feed. So, and having the babies with you, you begin to recognise what your baby does. It tells you that your baby is hungry. So I'm going to ask you another question. I'm going to say, how can you tell when your baby has had enough? Yeah? How can you tell when your baby's had enough? You're probably saying, well, the baby just stops feeding. And that's true, yeah? Sometimes there's absolutely no doubt that your baby's had enough. The baby comes off the breast and it's absolutely sparko, yeah? It's all, milk dribbling down its chin, yeah? It's definitely had enough. But some babies are inclined to sometimes just to snack. I want to sort of set the scene for you for a moment, and I just want to sort of put it into sort of a situation that maybe you'll recognise. Imagine that you're at home, and your partner is just had some tea, just sat on the sofa and is just watching the telly. Yeah, they've got the remote control in their hand. Perhaps they put their feet up on the sofa, and as the feet go up, the eyelids go down. As soon as the eyelids go down, you take the remote control, you switch the channel over. The next thing that happens is that your partner's eyelids spring open and they say, I was watching that. That can be your baby sometimes with feeding, yeah? So they're just so comfortable and cosy, snuggled up to you, just feeding, and they're kind of just feeding, sipping and stopping, and they're very relaxed. And sometimes you can think, I've got things to do. I want to go to the toilet. I want to go and get something to eat. Blah 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 blah. Da. And you think, as soon as they finish feeding, I put them down. I've got in my head what I want to do next. So you're quite keen for them to finish feeding, and you think, oh, this must be it because they've kind of stopped. So you put them down very carefully, and you put them down, and then the next moment they go, wow. That's just like your partner with the remote control. I was still feeding. I was watching that. Yeah. So actually, sometimes you really have to be sure that they've really had enough, that they've really had a complete feed. And a good way to do that is to stroke their cheek. Yeah. So what this is doing is stimulating a little nerve there, yeah? And if you stroke their cheek and they're still hungry, they'll carry on, they'll start lapping again, yeah? What you could do is that you could tickle their toes, or you could rub the palm of their hand. You'll often find if they're just resting and just having a little snooze, or just just feeding and then just resting in between, then if you do that, then you can remind them of the job in hand. Yeah, so then you can be sure that when they're really not interested, that they've had enough. Sometimes also I would say to you, sometimes babies will be so cuddly and warm and snuggly that they keep falling asleep because of that as well. So sometimes if you're feeding the baby and they keep falling asleep, the best thing to do is to undress them a little bit so they're more skin to skin with you, so that way they don't, they're not so warm and so snuggly, so they're nice and cuddly, and it feels a lovely safe place to feed and feel nice and comfortable for both of you. But again, it's a time that you don't want them to be too hot, because they'll be maybe just dropping off to sleep just a little bit there. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video just here, and we'll continue in a little while, carrying on with the questions, and I've got lots of things that I want to show you, positions, all sorts of things relating to feeding. So continue in a while with part 2.